Hello, Home Slices. It is Kiera with Home Slice Adulting coming to you all with um, and Iyanla Fix My Life, featuring Charisse, Jackson Jordan, and Veronica Obeng. Now, before we get started, I want to say thank you for clicking on this. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, don't forget to hit that little episode of Braxton Family Values, which was the first episode that documented what was going on after the Braxton sisters, aside from Tracy, decided to protest the show. So be sure to check that out. But for now, let's get into season 5, episode 501 of Iyanla Fix My Life. Now, off top, I'm unfamiliar with both of these women, so I have no backstory whatsoever or who their husbands are. So everything I know about them will essentially be strictly off the strength of what happened in this episode of Iyanla Fix My Life. They are both beautiful women who are on reality shows and have therefore gone through very public divorces and are experiencing a sort of identity crisis as a result of their tumultuous, marriages and divorces. Now, Charisse Jackson Jordan is from The Real Housewives of Potomac, which I do not watch. And Veronica Obeng is from Second Wives Club, which I also do not watch. So this episode is about getting unstuck from a lack of identity. And I do believe that this is a very interesting episode, particularly because this is a lot of young women who lose their identities once they get into a relationship. So I felt like this was topic to do a show on. However, after watching the full episode, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm trying to get comfortable. After watching the whole episode, I felt a little bored, actually. For me, the fact that I'm not invested at all in their stories, even though they are celebrities or reality stars, was something that kind of made me disconnect from the stories a little bit. If they were a little more better known or more known to me, maybe I would have enjoyed it more. Excuse me. Not that I necessarily watch Iyanla for entertainment's sake. Like, it is a show, you do watch TV to be entertained, but for me it feels more like I watch Iyanla because I want to examine myself and what's going on in my own life. And I measure that against some of the tools that Iyanla poses in, maybe that's the bigger reason why I wasn't as in, I wasn't as in. I feel as if I don't struggle with an identity issue, even though I'm in a long-term relationship. But moving on, talk with Cherise, who was 52 years old and was married for like more than 20 years. Cherise married a man who had all the things that she didn't want. She didn't want to marry someone who had already been married. She didn't want to marry somebody who had kids. She didn't want to marry somebody who was in the sports field. And she married all three. She went against her better judgment, married something years, had children with him just for it to end so poorly. So sometimes you just got to trust your gut. But moving on, she said, great, until he lost interest in like the 9th year when he moved out of their bedroom, and she moved out of their bedroom into the guest room with him. So she's literally following him around. Now, Iyanla Van Zant says that Charisse is driven by fear and the fear of being alone. Charisse says that, originally she didn't believe in divorce, but her hand is now being forced because, her husband has divorced her. She stayed holding on, hoping that things would change. But Iyanla was like, everything you're talking about right now is just no. Okay, what is it? Why are you here, really? And Charisse begins to cry because she feels like she's allowed herself to waste her life on somebody who really didn't want her. And some of the evidence that he didn't want her is that he began to cheat on her in their 8th year. Now, I doubt that it took that long for her husband to start cheating on her, considering his career as an NBA player and now a coach. I would imagine that he had cheated on her all along and she didn't realize until the 8th year, or she turned a blind eye. But moving on, Charisse said that she made excuses for him, and then somehow he moved to New Jersey and moved somebody else into his house. And I don't know the full story on that. Maybe somebody can give me some background. But moving on, Iyanla said that there's a part of Charisse that still wants Eddie, and I 100% get that. Even when you get out of a terrible relationship with someone, there's still a that longs to be with somebody that you are familiar with, that longs to be with somebody who you had a connection with. And sometimes we, even as bad as a relationship as something may be, we feel such an intense longing to be with somebody simply because we don't want to be alone. And Iyanla is saying to Charisse, you need to figure out the part of you that wants to still be in a relationship with your ex-husband, and you need to kill that part of you. Because she will try to sabotage all of your efforts to move on. And I 100% understand that. Moving on, Iyanla introduces Charisse to a blank slate room that allows her to write on the walls in an exercise and figuring out who Charisse is and, moving forward. And Iyanla says to Charisse the permission of how she saw herself. Everything that she thought her husband did to her were things that she did to herself because she allowed them. So I think a good lesson. We can go throughout our lives feeling like victims and feeling like everyone is treating us poorly, but we're the people who stand there and take it. In some instances, there's nothing that you can do about your mistreatment, but a lot of times you have the option. You have choice on your side so that when things happen to you, you have the ability to leave. And Charisse just did not exercise that ability at all and was basically forced. Her husband divorced her. But moving on, we meet Veronica, who is 34 years old and was married for 5 years. She said that she is here on the Iyanla Fitzgerald part, and it wrecked her life. The infidelity was something that she could not deal with, and it was so many instances that she lost count. She says that she should have known because she was his 4th wife, so I guess she should have been on the 4th wives club, okay? That the absolute last straw was when his mistress publicly humiliated her on Instagram, tagging their children, their colleagues, on social media, and had integrated into their lives so much that she spent the holidays at their house. That's absolutely too much. I think I would lose my mind. Like, a part of me is not even really processing the fact that this woman's husband has basically integrated a mistress into their lives so much so that she ate food at their table on Christmas and maybe even had a present under the tree. That would bother me so much, and it really bothered Iyanla because Iyanla felt so bad for Veronica, and Veronica told the story like very casually, like, hey, I went to the store and bought cookies today, okay? Iyanla calls her neck down dead, and we get into a little bit of her family history. Apparently, her dad cheated on her mom for her mother, and it was emotionally exhausting. That it was so exhausting for her that it felt like her mother was almost, because she kept having to lift her mother up from being so dejected about being cheated on, and the fact that she felt that way contributed to the fact that she ended up becoming her mother. And that was something that Veronica was able to acknowledge. Now, Veronica denies, very much so, that her children can see the type of pain and the influence that this divorce is having on her life. And Iyanla made an interesting point and was saying that, your children lived inside of you, and your children, for the first 9 months of their lives, the soundtrack to their lives was your heartbeat. So they can observe that something is wrong with you. And if she thinks that her children don't know what's going on inside of her, in her mind, and the fact that, they don't live with their dad anymore, then she's crazy if she thinks that she can hide her emotional turmoil from her children. And Veronica is really worried about that, about passing down what she received from her mother down to her own children. Now, they talk about Veronica's husband is a plastic surgeon named Dr. Michael Obeng. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. But anyway, she says that she wasn't sure if she ever really knew him, and that she does not want to give her kids to him and she would die first, because she feels that he does not have the moral fortitude to take care of their children. Now, Iyanla brings up a point and says that even though he was a certain way with Veronica, that does not mean that he's going to be that way with his children, because those are two very different relationships. The way that you are with your wife does not necessarily indicate the way that you will be with your children. And on the other hand, I definitely understand where Veronica is coming from a place of he had such a lack of integrity that she does not want that to be passed on to her children. But moving on, Veronica has her own blank slate room, and she seems to the amount of writing that she has to do. She doesn't seem to want to do the work, just off the top. But moving on, we see Iyanla checking in on Charisse. And so Charisse is unhappy, and she says she avoids thinking about what's going on with her divorce. Iyanla writes an identity page and highlights that our ancestors as black to go through hell in this country, whether that was in the form of chattel slavery, or times during Jim Crow, or even right now when there are still threads of sexism and racism still woven into the fabric of this country. We have ancestors that went through hell in this country, and the fact that she is so emotionally upset and broken up over a person, shows that she should be stronger, that she should realize that she comes from a legacy of Black women who have had to deal with so many different things, so many different obstacles, and that she should take comfort in knowing that she's inside of her. Moving on, Cherise says that she's been focusing on her experience and not her identity. And so Iyanla says that she sought external validation, like so many women do, and we all know that. We all know that there are women who sell their souls so that they can have a nice house and $1,000 shoes and great clothes, and send their kids to the best schools. Not that you shouldn't, want the best for your children, but what I'm saying is there are women who forego in life so that they can have the fantasy life. But moving on, excuse me, y'all, I'm so tired. We see Iyanla checking in on Veronica. Veronica is having a hard time with the exercise. Veronica has nice handwriting, I'll say that. Does Veronica look like Jocelyn Hernandez? I think that she looks like Jocelyn Hernandez, like a lot. But moving on, Veronica describes herself as a person who is very insecure, and Iyanla talks about how that plays a part about how she shows up in the world. If you think that you are this thing, then that's the image that you project to the world. As a man or woman thinks, so is he or she. And then Iyanla says that there was something that attracted her husband, and that's something that they have to work on. But next we see Charisse and Veronica together. And basically they are one and the same, despite being different ages. They have a very similar story. And basically Iyanla is telling Veronica that if she does not get her act together, she's going to end up like Charisse. Now, first off, if I was Charisse, I would be a little offended by that, but whatever. Basically telling Veronica, Charisse is your future. But I think that Veronica should be able to take from this whole situation that she is fortunate to have gone through this at a younger age instead of staying married and really not knowing what to do with her life after being married to someone so long that she had tied her identity to. And now that cord tying her identity to her husband has been cut, she doesn't really know who she is anymore. And there's so much time that has lapsed their marriage and their divorce that she's really going to have a more difficult time. And the fact that Veronica was only married for 5 years and is only 34, she has some time to really figure out what she wants to do and enjoy a good chunk of her life that Charisse cannot get back. But Charisse describes herself as someone who found love in others as opposed to herself. Veronica describes herself as a woman who lost her way because she strayed from her own path to follow something else. They say that historically Black women stay in relationships that are unhealthy and it's time to interrupt the pattern. I don't know that we have to put the word Black in front of that. I think that to an extent, all women have had to historically stay in relationships that they were not able that were unhealthy, I'll say, because they were stuck. Depending on what time period you look at, women were not able to get divorces without, the agreement of their husband. Women had to stay in abusive relationships. Women have been denied the right to get a divorce. So I don't know that's a Black women thing. I think it's an all women thing. But moving on, we talked about staying stuck, and Cherise says that her denial and avoidance keeps her stuck. And I feel like that was an apt analysis. Veronica says that internalizing things and shutting down keeps her stuck. And I think that's apt as well. Now, they do an exercise about things that keep them stuck. And the point of the exercise is to show that the reason they are stuck has nothing to do with their ex-husbands. This is not about your marriage. This is not about what happened to you. This is about you moving forward and realizing that you have to establish your own identity, figure out who you are before you can really heal from this. Moving on, we see that Charisse says that she sold her soul to have the life that she wanted. I like that Charisse is being really vulnerable, but that's going to change a little later on. We'll talk. Moving on, Iyanla says that they have to get rid of the thought that getting past this stuckness is actually difficult. There are things and barriers that we put up in our mind to trick ourselves into believing that something we need to do is going to be difficult. And if we think about things in a different way, they may become easy. I mean, for me, losing weight is something that I have always felt was a challenge for me. I was never able to consistently eat right or consistently work out. And in my mind, doing that is going to be increasingly, difficult. And maybe if I'm able to change my frame of mind, it'll become a little easier for me. But moving on, we see that Veronica thinks that just forgetting it all, just saying, I'm done with all of this. I'm done with feeling sorry for myself. I'm done being in this stuckness for my rest. Veronica feels like that is ridiculous. But like I said, I think Iyanla has a point. Depending on what we tell ourselves about a task, it can seem insurmountable. But she tells them to make statements about what they really want. And Veronica wants to forgive herself. And Charisse wants to reclaim the person who knew what she wanted and how to get it. She wants to get back in finding the root of her identity. So it's a new day, and Iyanla comes in with rollers and whatnot with no makeup on and a bonnet. And Charisse found herself looking for love from a man even as a child, which she talks about her father. She says that she's alone and afraid, and that was triggered, it was not caused by the divorce, and that there's a distinction. Veronica's father would rage and needed to be in control of everything. And she said that she felt that her father wasted his life and destroyed his family. And Iyanla flipped it and said, well, in what ways have you wasted your life and destroyed your family? And Veronica says that basically I ran towards what I was trying to run away from, which was a man like her father. So Veronica was able to see that in many ways she was like her mother, and in many ways she married her father. And so I think that acknowledgement alone is enough to say that for Veronica, this was particularly successful. Even though Veronica did not seem to have the same emotion, to be as emotionally affected as Charisse. Now, this is their last meetup, and Iyanla says she wants to show them how to be and see differently. And she holds up a card that says that I am not a victim. And it's just about being accountable and responsible for your own happiness, for what happens in your life, for the way that people treat you. If you're in a situation where somebody is not treating you appropriately, you have the ability to take yourself out of that relationship. And you should exercise that right when you feel the need. Moving on, Veronica's very afraid of losing her children. And Iyanla asks, well, what if it's best that your children are with their father? And Veronica is just very afraid of that possibility. I don't necessarily know why Iyanla is pressing this issue as if Veronica may not be the best parent for her children to be with. But if I had to take a guess, I would say that Iyanla is trying to get Veronica to work on herself, to give her time to really figure out who she is, get her money up, create a stable environment so that she can really be there for her children in the best way possible and be emotionally stable as well. And I think that that is, a good idea. And I just think Veronica can't get over the fact that she may not be able to have, the primary custody of her children. Next, we see Charisse. She says she's afraid of being lonely, but, eventually she can get past that. And Iyanla gives them the task of being accountability partners. Now, when they show the little clip at the end of them talking, telling us what's going on with Charisse and Veronica now, we said that Veronica is doing better and that she's using the tools that Iyanla gave her to move on from her ex-husband, and that he really doesn't affect her in her daily life anymore. So that's good to hear. Unfortunately, I won't say unfortunately, in contrast, I'll say Cherise said that she has not been taking Iyanla's advice and has decided to walk her own path. Now, look, I like Iyanla a whole bunch. I feel like she calls people on their BS, but I do feel that her approach may not be for everybody. Just because Iyanla says do it this way does not mean that she is wrong. Sometimes it just may not work for people, and I 100% get that, because Iyanla, to some people, can come off as very abrasive, but she's really trying to cut through all the chatter and get down to the real roots of what's going on in somebody's life. And it's interesting because Charisse is the one who came off the most vulnerable, but seemed to walk away with the least, concerning the tools that she should that Iyanla gave her to use in her own personal life. Anyway, to me, that's a little bit disheartening, but I hope that whatever Charisse is doing, she is actually working for her. I really hope that. And I do not feel that any advice that is not in line with what she really felt would help. So that's going to be all from me. Quite bored by this particular episode, and I'm looking forward to whatever happens next. I don't know what's coming on next, but I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys. Peace out, home slices.